So, hello there. I'm Caroline Esterson, your host. And before we get stuck in today, I just want to share a quick story with you. So, at the weekend, I went to a Kaylee. Oh my God, it was absolutely wonderful and hilarious. Brilliant music, slightly off dancing, lots of shouting at each other, like left foot, no, your other left foot, spin. Oh my God, sorry. You know how crazy it gets. Honestly, it really was joyful, exactly what I needed. And I was there with a group of women who are some of my closest friends, even though, and this is the really mad bit, most of us only see each other once a year. We all met on a hen do, not even a boozy one. The bride, Sonia, my best friend, who you'll meet in an episode very soon, I promise you. She doesn't drink. So instead of cocktails and bad heads the following day, we went to Center Parks for a fitness weekend with Mr. Motivator himself. Oh, what a man. Some of you may remember or have heard of him from the 90s on morning breakfast TV, wearing his luminous lycra, leg warmers, and with an energy level that really should be regulated by law. He has become quite a bit of a cult figure in some circles, and for reasons that still feel slightly unhinged, we've gone away together every year since. Just one weekend every year, and whilst a few of the group members have changed over the decades, the core group is still the same, and the new additions have fitted straight in. So at the Kaylee, Jules, whose birthday it was, said something that really made me think. She said, we only see each other once a year, but over 30 years, we have seen and experienced everything together. Illnesses, births, deaths, job changes, relationship changes, all of those big life pivots. We have helped each other through every milestone of life. And I thought, like, bloody hell, that all started with a hen doing a man in fluorescent socks, which is, of course, a very long way of saying big, meaningful things in life often start with tiny, slightly random moments that are so easy to ignore. And that is exactly what today's episode is about. This isn't a pep talk, it's a practical guide with a glint in its eye. Smart moves, slight chaos. Welcome to Little Moves, Big Careers. The question I want to explore in this busy world of ours is, what is it that I really need to pay attention to? What do I need to notice? In the podcast, we are about to go into a run of real life career stories. Real people with all the celebrations and messiness that is actually human. Because rarely is a career a straight line. It is often awkward, full of critical decision points. At times, we'd rather not have to think about them. And moments of indecision or crossroads. So before we dive into these, I want to help you listen to these stories in a way that is really useful for your own career. Because if we're not careful, when we hear career stories, it's really easy just to listen. But sometimes our brains also do something very sneaky. We go, they were just lucky. I'm not that lucky. Or maybe even, they sounded so confident. I'd never feel that confident in that situation. Or, you know what, they probably have more experience. Or, you know what, any one of these combinations that is our brain quietly chatting to us, making us shut down. So I want to talk to you firstly about why we do this. And there are three main reasons I can think of. Firstly, without realizing it, our brain is actually protecting us because the brain's job isn't to help you grow. It's to help you feel safe and honestly, frankly, not a bit rubbish about yourself. So if it can explain someone else's success as being about who they are, not what they did, then that means you don't have to feel that awkward nudge that says, maybe I could try something different too. Secondly, we all love a simple story. So instead of noticing all the small, messy, very human decisions that made someone, we squash it down into they're just confident or they were in the right place at the right time, which is about efficiency for the brain. The brain is there to spot patterns. But frankly, it's actually terrible if you want to learn how careers really move forward. And finally, and this is a bit of a biggie, any story that suggests change can feel like effort. It can feel risky or emotionally exposed. Sometimes our brains downgrade the relevance of the lesson to keep us where we are. So, when I say I want you listening like a detective to the stories coming up, it's because the value of the story isn't in the headline. Instead, it's in the tiny decisions, the moments of discomfort, and the choices people nearly didn't make. It's helping you to spot the patterns of success so that you too can apply them to your career. So this episode is all about what to notice when you hear these stories and why noticing is the first and most underrated power move in your career. In the career flywheel, this first bold move is spot and solve. And the very first little nudge is just this: notice. It's quiet. It goes on in the background, which is why so many people brush over this critical skill. But you, nah, you're really going to start noticing like the genius that you are. So here's what I want you clocking up as you listen to the stories coming up. There are 4 things that are key for you to spot. Let's dig into each one. Firstly, point 1 is notice the moment before the move. In almost every career story that sounds impressive, in hindsight, there's a moment just before it where someone thinks, that's interesting, or even that annoyed me more than it should have, or that opportunity feels scary, but you know what? It's also a little bit exciting. That's data. But most of us barrel straight past these moments because we're busy, we're tired, or we're telling ourselves we're just overthinking it. So when you hear the stories, listen for things like the offhand comment, the casual invitation, the thing that didn't quite sit right, because that's usually where the real story starts. And these little signals build. I'm sure you've already noticed them in your own career. And the more you pay attention to them, the more they help provide you with the drive to act.
Now, welcome to the chaos. It's game time.
0 prizes, mild embarrassment, but hopefully excellent fun. All right, then we haven't done a game for a little while, and frankly, I was getting a bit twitchy about it. So I have a new little game for you. This one is called Signal or Static, because not everything at work is meaningful, is it? But some of the things absolutely are. So I'm going to give you 5 situations, and I want you to play along and decide, is this just background noise, static? Or is this a little career signal worth paying attention to? And more importantly, what could you do with it? So, are you ready? Scenario 1. People often say to you, you're really good at explaining this stuff. Is this signal or static? What do you think? Well, you know what? If multiple people say it in different situations over time, it's probably a signal, isn't it? It might be telling you that you're a natural translator between teams. Maybe it's suggesting that you have an ability to simplify the complex, or just that people trust you to make sense of the crazy stuff that's going on around you. So a tiny move for you here could be maybe something like offering to present a short update to others, helping to onboard new starters, or positioning yourself as the go-to person for clarity. All of these little moves help to improve your visibility. And what happens when you become visible? More people get to see you, and that's really important for your career. So next up, scenario 2. You keep getting asked to just help out on extra bits of work. At first, you think, why is everyone else swanning off when I'm drowning? But is that signal or static? Yep. Often, again, it's a signal that shows you're trusted, that you're seen as capable under pressure. Maybe that you're the person that just gets things done. And all of that is brilliant unless it never turns into an opportunity. So how do you do that? Your 2 millimeter move here might be something like asking for formal involvement instead of just putting in invisible effort. And by that, I really mean making sure that there is clarity over the request, that the right people know that you're doing it, that you're making sure that you're able to make a decision about whether it's the right thing for you to get involved in or not. It could be using what you've done as evidence in a development chat, or saying to your boss, if I'm contributing at this level, can we talk about what's next for me, please? All of this is you signposting that you're really happy to do this extra work, but you want to be recognised for it. And that's really important. It's the same signal, yet a very different outcome depending on whether you notice what's happening. Scenario 3. You feel oddly irritated by a decision that everyone else seems absolutely fine with. You're thinking, this is inefficient, or that seems a bit unfair, or even, why are we doing it like that? Is that signal or static? Yep, it's a signal again, because irritation is often about your values showing up and waving that little tiny flag in your head that says, you need to pay attention to this. It might mean that you care about the quality, the people, the fairness, or how things get done, which is a little nudge for you towards suggesting an improvement, maybe leading a fix, or realizing, frankly, that you want a different type of role altogether. Frustration is really valuable information if you tune into it. Scenario 4. You get invited into meetings or conversations that aren't technically your job. Not formally, just, do you want to join this? Is that a signal or static? Yeah, again, it's a signal that people value your input. You might be being quietly tested, but you're definitely seen as someone that has potential that you might not see in yourself yet. So your little move here might be as small as showing up more prepared, asking smart questions and following up afterwards so that you're closing the loop, and suddenly you're part of a different conversation. That's how careers shift. Sideways first, and then up, up, up. And lastly, scenario 5. You keep thinking, oh God, I could have done that better. You're not being cocky. It's just a quiet acknowledgement to yourself. Is that a signal or static? Yeah, again, it's a signal, isn't it? It's a signal that your skills are ahead of your role. You're ready for more responsibility and you're outgrowing where you are, which might lead you to start thinking about taking ownership of something else, proposing a change, or starting a conversation about what's next. Remember, leadership isn't a job title. It's about how you, whatever level, whatever role you're in, how you choose to hold yourself and show up in work. Everyone can demonstrate leadership no matter what their role is. And it starts with noticing gaps and caring enough to step into them. So the point of this game isn't that every wobble at work is a grand destiny moment, but when the same kind of things keep showing up and you notice them, those comments, those invitations, the frustrations, and the little nudges, that's usually your career tapping you on the shoulder and going, oi, might be time for a tiny shift here. And when you start noticing those signals and acting on them, that's when your momentum starts to build, which is exactly what you'll hear in the stories coming up over the next few months. So this week, instead of asking, what big move should I make with my career? Try asking a better question. What small signals have I been politely ignoring? Start there. That's usually more than enough to get you going. And that leads me on to my second point. Notice the emotional reaction, not just the logic in what's happening. Because we're very good at pretending careers are purely rational, and they aren't. They're emotional, ego bruising, and occasionally rage fueling. So notice when you or others for that matter feel underestimated, get bored, feel invisible, when your confidence gets that little knock. These emotional reactions are all signals to you that something needs to change, shift, or grow. But most people ignore them until it's too late, or they've hit a wall and are absolutely fed up, are ready to throw their laptop in the sea. We're trying to spot things earlier than that, aren't we? Early warning signs are so much easier to deal with than that big hairy lump that's growing under the carpet that grows and grows until you've tripped up and are lying there with a chipped tooth and a bloody nose. Now, in our work, we talk about learning happening on 3 levels, and we call it CPR, content, process, and reaction, and it's exactly the same for careers too. So what does CPR actually stand for? The C is content, what's actually happening, your role, the tasks you do, the projects you're involved in, the workload. P stands for the process. How does it all work? The systems, the politics, who decides what, how things really get done around here. And then there's the R, the reaction. How's this landing for me? How do I actually feel about this? Am I energized, bored, frustrated, invisible, stretched, or flat? And here's the bit that we're mostly pretty terrible at because we're busy. Most people only pay attention to the content. What am I doing? What's my job? What tasks are on my list? But the really powerful career clues often live in the process and the reaction. How things are happening and how that makes you feel about yourself and your future. Because that's what shapes the next move. And if you ignore your reaction long enough, it doesn't disappear. It just turns into disengagement, resentment, or a full-blown, I'm done moment. Whereas if you clock it early, you can make much smaller, much braver and much smarter adjustments along the way. 2mm differences. And that brings me nicely to the third point. Notice who shows up and who doesn't. Another thing people massively underestimate in their career stories is the role other people play. No one moves forward entirely on their own. Even the self-made ones had someone who opened a door, gave them a nudge, or said, you'd be good at that. Or perhaps even quietly vouched for them in a room they weren't in. So as you listen to the stories, clock who helped, who blocked, who didn't even realise they had power, because career moves are made on connection and context. Both Wendy and I have this phrase on repeat in all our workshops. You ready for it? Results revolve around relationships. So stop treating them all as a transaction and start clocking the people who matter to you and treating them as the gift that they are. Build that relationship. Start noticing the informal power map around you as the game changer that it is. Now on to our fourth point. Notice the tiny decisions, not just the big ones. You know what? When we tell stories, we love a big moment. There's got to be an arc, something major that happens, a moment that stops you in your tracks. From a career perspective, that's maybe something like a resignation, a promotion, or, any kind of dramatic pivot. But what actually changes careers are frankly the boring little choices. Saying yes to a meeting you could have skipped, speaking up when it would have actually been easier to stay quiet, trying something before you feel ready, following up instead of assuming somebody will remember. These are all tiny 2mm difference decisions. They're not sexy, but they are wildly powerful over time, because what you're signaling to others is that I can be trusted and that I'm consistent. So listen for the small stuff. That's the bit you can steal and use immediately. And finally, point 5, notice what people didn't know. Now, this one's really important. In almost every story, the person took action and didn't know how it would turn out. There was no clear path, no confirmation or certainty. They didn't know if they were making the right call. They probably had a bit of a hunch and a bit of courage. We massively overestimate how clear things were in hindsight. So if you're waiting to feel certain before you move, I love you dearly, but that day's just not coming. Progress tends to reward motion, not perfection. And as I've said repeatedly during various episodes in this podcast, messy action beats beautiful planning every single time. So here's what I'd love you to do as we head into these real life stories. Instead of thinking, could I do that? Ask yourself some different questions. Things like, what did they notice that I might be missing? Where did they choose to act, even when it felt uncomfortable? Who or what helped shift things for them? What are tiny versions of that I maybe could try? Because the goal isn't to copy someone else's career, it is to train your noticing muscles so you can spot your own moments when they show up. And I promise you, they're showing up already way more often than you think they are. Okay, then, so I've set the scene for the coming episodes. We've already had some career stories on the podcast, so you might like to go back and listen to a couple of those, asking the kind of questions, noticing what you're noticing, so that you're learning and you're ready for next week. Because next up, we're getting properly into the messy, human, awkward, brave, and sometimes accidental stories of how careers grow. So listen like a detective, clock the small stuff, and remember, big careers are built on the little moves. They always have been, and they always will be. That's it for today's episode. So if you enjoy this show, I would really appreciate a quick rating or review on your podcast platform. It makes such a big difference and it helps more bold, brilliant people just like you find us. Remember, you'll find show notes, tools, and team conversation starters in the show notes. And if you want to bring some fresh thinking into your team or company, that's literally what we do. So drop me a line at caroline@inspireyourgenius.com. I promise we'll make it sing for you. Until next week, make the move, even if it's tiny, especially if it's tiny.